Hello warriors, welcome back to the channel of Learning Philosophy. The wealthy don't fear your ambition, they fear your awakening. Philosophy is the weapon they've hidden in plain sight, and in the next few minutes I'll expose exactly why they've built an entire system to keep it from you. By the end of this video you'll possess 5 strategic tools the elite use to maintain dominance, and the precise antidote to break their control. Let's be ruthlessly clear, the game is rigged, but not in the way you think. The truly powerful don't hoard money, they hoard knowledge. Specifically philosophical frameworks that decode power, manipulation and control. While you're sold entertainment and distraction, they're studying Stoicism, Machiavelli and Nietzsche, not for enlightenment but for domination. Today, I'm breaking their code. You'll learn the moral shield, how they use ethics to paralyze you, the meaning vacuum, why they keep you searching but never finding, the reaction trap, how emotional manipulation controls your decisions, the comfort prison, why they want you happy, not powerful, the knowledge embargo, the specific philosophies they hide from public education. This isn't theory, this is warfare intelligence. Let's begin. Keynote 1, the moral shield. Listen carefully because this is the first and most insidious weapon they use against you. The elite have mastered something most people never see coming. They weaponize morality itself. They construct elaborate ethical frameworks, beautiful moral systems that sound absolutely righteous on the surface. Fairness, humility, waiting your turn, playing by the rules, being grateful for what you have. These aren't just suggestions, they're commandments designed specifically to keep you compliant, passive, and non-threatening. Here's what makes this so brilliantly diabolical. While you're being taught that ambition is actually greed, that strategic thinking is manipulation, that self-interest is fundamentally evil, they're operating by a completely different set of rules. They praise selflessness in their speeches and interviews. They talk about giving back and social responsibility. But watch what they actually do. Study their moves. Examine their decisions when money and power are on the line. This is asymmetric warfare at its finest. They've convinced you to fight with one hand tied behind your back while they're using every tool available. You've internalized a moral framework that actively works against your interests while claiming it's for your own good. You feel guilty for wanting more. You feel ashamed for thinking strategically about your advancement. You apologize for taking up space and demanding what you're worth. Meanwhile, the truly powerful have studied Machiavelli in private. They understand his core insight that shaped 5 centuries of power dynamics. The prince, the leader, the person who wants to actually achieve something significant in this world must learn to appear virtuous while being prepared to act against virtue when circumstances demand it. Not because they're evil, but because reality doesn't reward the purely virtuous. It rewards the strategically adaptable. Look at any major corporation, any political dynasty, any accumulation of generational wealth. You'll see public displays of morality paired with ruthless private action. This isn't hypocrisy in the way you've been taught to think about it. It's strategy. It's understanding that there are rules for appearances and rules for results, and confusing the two is how you lose. They've made you the enforcer of your own limitations. You police yourself. You stop yourself from pursuing opportunities because it wouldn't be humble. You don't negotiate aggressively because it wouldn't be fair. You don't leverage your advantages because it wouldn't be right. And while you're doing all of this self-sabotage in the name of being a good person, they're acquiring assets, building networks, and consolidating power. Philosophy. Real philosophy, not the watered-down version they want you to consume, teaches you to ask the most dangerous question imaginable. Who benefits from this moral system? Who profits when you believe that ambition is wrong? Who gains when you think strategic thinking is dirty? Who maintains their position when you're too ethical to compete at their level? Read Nietzsche's Genealogy of Morals and your eyes will open in ways that can never be closed again. He systematically exposes how moral systems are constructed by specific groups to serve specific interests. He shows you how what we call good and evil aren't cosmic truths handed down from the universe, they're strategic constructs created by people with agendas. Sometimes those agendas align with your interests. Often they don't. The antidote to the moral shield isn't becoming immoral or unethical. That's what they want you to think philosophy teaches, because it discredits the entire pursuit. The real antidote is developing your own ethical framework based on your goals, your values, your vision for your life, not their convenient commandments. Morality isn't something you discover like a natural law. It's something you construct like a building, and you can choose what foundation to build on. Claude is AI and can make mistakes. Please double-check responses. Keynote 2, the meaning vacuum. Now we move to something even more sophisticated, even more invisible. And that's exactly why it's so devastatingly effective. They've engineered a crisis of meaning in your life, and most people don't even realize it's happening to them. Let me walk you through how this works, because once you see it, you'll recognize it everywhere. Traditional religion declined rapidly over the past century. The structures that gave people purpose, community, direction, a sense of where they fit in the grand scheme of things, these collapsed or lost their authority. And here's the critical part that nobody talks about. Nothing substantive replaced them. That wasn't an accident. That wasn't just the natural progression of secularization. That was strategic deprivation executed at a societal level. You were left spiritually starving without even knowing you were hungry. So what did you do? You started grasping at consumerism, thinking the next purchase would fill the void, grasping at social media validation, checking likes and followers like they're a measurement of your worth, grasping at self-help platitudes, those Instagram quotes and motivational speeches that provide this temporary emotional high but zero actual foundation to build your life on. This isn't accidental chaos. This isn't just the way modern life evolved. This is strategic deprivation, and the people at the top understand exactly what they're doing. A population without purpose is a population without direction. Think about that for a second. Without direction, there's no organized resistance. Without a clear sense of meaning, people don't unite around causes. They don't build movements. They don't challenge power structures. They're too busy scrolling, shopping, and searching for something they can't even name. You're so busy asking yourself, what's my purpose? What's my passion? What's my why? That you never stop to question their why. You never examine why the system is structured the way it is. You never ask who benefits from your existential confusion. Meanwhile, the elite have crystal clear purpose. They're not wandering around wondering what their life means. They have singular focus on the acquisition and maintenance of power, wealth, and influence. Here's what most people miss entirely. They've studied existentialism not to have an existential crisis themselves, but to exploit yours. They understand Sartre and Camus and Kierkegaard not because they were looking for meaning, but because they're looking for leverage. They know that a person in existential despair is a person who can be sold anything, a cure for loneliness, a sense of belonging, an identity, a tribe, a product that promises transformation. The beauty of the meaning vacuum from their perspective is that it's self-perpetuating. You try one solution, it doesn't work, so you try another. You jump from this self-help guru to that spiritual teacher, to this political movement, to that consumer identity. You're a Nike person, or an Apple person, or you're into crystals or crypto, or whatever the current thing is, and each time it fails to provide lasting meaning, you don't blame the system that created the vacuum, you blame yourself for not finding the right answer yet. This keeps you in permanent seeking mode, always looking, never finding, always consuming, never creating, always following someone else's path, never forging your own. And while you're trapped in this cycle, you're not a threat. You're not building anything that challenges their position. You're just another consumer of meaning products, endlessly searching for what they've deliberately kept out of reach. Philosophy offers what they've actively denied you, and this is why they keep it out of mainstream education. Real philosophical frameworks for creating meaning, not discovering it. Camus taught, you don't need cosmic purpose to act with conviction. The universe might be absurd and meaningless, but you can create meaning through your choices and your rebellion against meaninglessness itself. Stoicism teaches you that meaning isn't found in some external search. It's forged through virtuous action aligned with your principles. You create meaning by living according to your values, by facing challenges with courage, by contributing something worthwhile. Kierkegaard showed you that authentic existence means making your own choices and owning them completely, not living according to the crowd's expectations. The moment you generate your own meaning, everything changes. You become ungovernable. You stop seeking their validation because you've established your own values. You stop buying their products promising fulfillment because you've found fulfillment in your own purpose. You stop following their prescribed paths because you're cutting your own trail. Keynote 3, the reaction trap. Now let's talk about how they control you minute by minute, hour by hour, every single day, without you even noticing it's happening. They control you by controlling your emotional responses, and this might be the most prevalent form of manipulation in modern society. Media, advertising, political theater, social media algorithms, every single piece of content that enters your awareness has been engineered with one purpose: to keep you in PE. Perpetual reaction mode, outrage, fear, desire, tribal identity, righteous anger, anxiety about the future. These aren't bugs in the system. These aren't unfortunate side effects of modern communication technology. These are the system. This is the intended outcome. When you're reacting, you're not thinking. When you're emotional, you're predictable. When you're predictable, you're controllable. Here's how this works at the mechanical level. Every morning you wake up, and what's the first thing you do? You check your phone. Immediately you're flooded with information designed to trigger emotional responses. Breaking news that makes you afraid. Political content that makes you angry at the other side. Social media posts that make you feel inadequate or envious. Advertisements that create desire for things you didn't even know existed 5 seconds ago. Your nervous system goes into immediate arousal. Your cortisol spikes. Your attention narrows. Your rational thinking shuts down. And in that state, you make decisions. You click. You share. You argue in comments. You buy. You react exactly the way they predicted you would react because they have spent billions of dollars studying how human psychology works. They know your buttons better than you know them yourself. Strategic power requires emotional sovereignty, and this is something the truly powerful understand at a level most people never reach. The powerful don't react, they respond after calculation. There's a massive difference between those two things. Reaction is immediate, automatic, emotional. Response is deliberate, considered, strategic. Reaction is giving control to external stimuli. Response is maintaining control regardless of external stimuli. They study behavioral psychology and emotional triggers not to free themselves, but to pull your strings like a puppeteer. Every algorithmic feed you scroll through has been optimized for engagement, which is just a polite word for emotional manipulation. Every news cycle is crafted to keep you in a state of heightened emotional arousal. Every product launch is engineered to bypass your rational mind and trigger immediate emotional reaction. Think about the last time you got into an argument online, the last time you made an impulse purchase, the last time you shared something because it made you angry without even verifying if it was true. In every single one of those moments, you thought you were making a choice. You thought you were expressing your authentic self. But you were executing their programming. You were following a script they wrote. The political theater is perhaps the most obvious example once you see it. They keep you perpetually divided into tribes. Left versus right. This identity versus that identity. This group versus that group. And they make sure you're emotionally invested in your tribe winning and the other tribe losing. You're so busy being outraged at the other side that you never look up to see who's benefiting from the entire conflict, while you're arguing with strangers on the internet about which politician is worse, while you're emotionally invested in culture war battles that have zero impact on your actual life. The powerful are making moves. They're passing legislation that affects your freedom. They're consolidating wealth that affects your opportunity. They're building systems that affect your future. And you're too emotionally exhausted from fighting tribal battles to even notice. Stoic philosophy is your countermeasure to all of this, and this is why it's having a resurgence right now. People are starting to wake up to the fact that emotional manipulation is the primary control mechanism of our era. Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca, these weren't just ancient philosophers pondering abstract ideas. They were practitioners teaching a practical system for maintaining sovereignty in hostile environments. The Stoics taught the discipline of emotional regulation, not as suppression where you bottle things up and pretend you don't feel anything, but as strategic control where you feel the emotion, acknowledge it, and then choose your response rather than being hijacked by automatic reaction. They developed specific practices that are more relevant now than ever. The dichotomy of control teaches you to distinguish between what you actually can control and what you can't. You can't control what appears in your newsfeed. You can control whether you engage with it. You can't control what other people say or do. You can control your interpretation and response. Most of your emotional suffering comes from trying to control things that are outside your control while neglecting the things that are within it. The Stoic pause is perhaps the most powerful technique you can implement immediately. Insert space between stimulus and response. Something happens that would normally trigger you. Before you react, you pause. 3 breaths, 5 seconds, whatever it takes to interrupt the automatic pattern. In that space, you reclaim your agency. When they trigger outrage, you choose calculated calm. When they offer fear, you choose rational assessment. Keynote 4, the comfort prison. This next mechanism is so elegant, so brilliantly designed, that most people will defend it even as it destroys them. Here's the paradox they've engineered into modern society. They want you comfortable enough to stay compliant, but struggling enough to stay distracted. This is the Goldilocks zone of control. Not too hot, not too cold, just right for maintaining their position at the top. Netflix, fast food, pornography, endless entertainment, social media dopamine hits, video games, streaming services, delivery apps that bring anything you want to your door. These aren't pleasures. These aren't rewards you've earned for hard work. These are sedatives. These are pacification tools dressed up as convenience and entertainment. You're being given just enough comfort to never rebel, but never enough security to gain actual power. Think about the genius of this system compared to historical methods of control. Previous systems throughout history used force and fear. Dictatorships, monarchies, authoritarian regimes, They controlled through violence and terror. That's crude. That's expensive. That requires constant surveillance and enforcement. That creates resentment and eventually rebellion. Force-based control systems always collapse because humans instinctively resist overt oppression. The modern system uses pleasure and convenience, and it's elegant in a way that's almost beautiful if it wasn't so sinister. It's self-maintaining. You defend your own prison because it has Wi-Fi. You argue for your own chains because they're comfortable. Someone suggests you're being controlled, and you laugh at them because you feel free. You feel like you're making choices. You feel like you're living your best life. And that's exactly what makes it so effective. The elite understands something that most people never grasp. They understand what Nietzsche taught about human nature and the development of strength. Suffering builds strength. Struggle creates capacity. Difficulty forges character. Comfort breeds weakness. Ease creates fragility. Pleasure produces dependence. This isn't motivational speaking. This is observable reality across every domain of human development. Oh, what do they do with this knowledge? They drown you in comfort while they practice deliberate discomfort. They give you entertainment while they engage in rigorous training. They offer you convenience while they pursue challenge. Look at what the actually powerful do with their time. Cold exposure, intermittent fasting, intense physical training, difficult intellectual work, meditation retreats, competitive sports, challenging conversations. They systematically introduce discomfort into their lives. Meanwhile, what are you doing? You're optimizing for ease. You're avoiding anything uncomfortable. You don't want to feel cold, so you control your temperature constantly. You don't want to feel hungry, so you eat whenever you want. You don't want to feel bored, so you're constantly stimulated. You don't want to feel challenged, so you stay in your comfort zone. And every single time you make the comfortable choice, you get weaker. Every time you avoid discomfort, you lose capacity. This creates a divergence that compounds over time. They're getting stronger, more disciplined, more capable. You're getting softer, more dependent, more fragile. The gap widens, the power differential increases, and the beautiful part from their perspective is that you're doing it to yourself. They don't have to force you into the comfort prison. You walk in voluntarily and lock the door behind you because it feels good. Social media is perhaps the most sophisticated comfort trap ever devised. You feel like you're connecting with people, but you're avoiding real relationship challenges. You feel like you're learning things, but you're consuming entertainment disguised as education. You feel like you're building something, but you're just scrolling. And the variable reward schedule, the likes and comments and shares, these create an addiction pattern that keeps you coming back, even when you know it's not good for you. Fast food and delivery apps. You never have to develop the discipline of cooking. You never have to plan ahead. You never have to delay gratification. Everything is available immediately at the press of a button. This seems like progress. This seems like advancement. But what you're really doing is outsourcing your executive function. You're training yourself to be unable to tolerate any delay between desire and satisfaction. Entertainment streaming services, infinite content, always something to watch, never a moment of boredom, never a moment where you have to sit with yourself and your thoughts, never a moment where discomfort might push you to create something instead of consume something. You're always the audience, never the performer, always the consumer, never the creator, always passive, never active. Philosophy teaches the value of voluntary hardship, and this concept is completely alien to modern comfort-obsessed culture. The Stoics practiced negative visualization where they would imagine losing everything they had. They practiced deliberate discomfort, sleeping on hard floors, eating simple food, exposing themselves to cold and heat, not because they were masochists, but because they understood that comfort makes you vulnerable to life's inevitable difficulties. Nietzsche's concept of amor fati, loving your fate including all of its difficulties and challenges, not just tolerating hardship, but embracing it as the mechanism of your growth. Eastern philosophy's emphasis on non-attachment, recognizing that clinging to comfort and pleasure creates suffering when they inevitably change or disappear. These aren't abstract philosophical concepts. These are practical tools for building anti-fragility. Your antidote starts with systematically introducing discomfort back into your life. Physical training that's actually difficult, not just movement that feels good. Intellectual challenge that makes your brain hurt, not just content that confirms what you already believe. Financial discipline that requires saying no to things you want. Creative struggle that prod. Uses something new instead of consuming what others have made. Keynote 5, the knowledge embargo. Now we arrive at the deepest level of control, the one that makes all the others possible. This is about what you were never taught and why you were never taught it. Notice what's completely absent from public education: practical philosophy, rhetoric and persuasion, formal logic, power dynamics, financial strategy, negotiation tactics, how influence actually works, how systems of control operate, the mechanics of wealth building, the psychology of manipulation. You receive just enough education to be a productive worker, just enough to follow instructions and complete tasks, but never enough to be a genuine threat to the existing power structure. You learn to memorize information for tests. You learn to show up on time and follow rules. You learn to accept authority without questioning it. You're trained to be a good employee, never a powerful leader. Meanwhile, elite private schools are teaching something completely different. Their children, starting at age 12, are studying classical rhetoric. They're learning formal debate. They're participating in philosophy seminars where they discuss Plato's Republic and the nature of justice and power. They're studying game theory. They're learning negotiation through mock trials and business simulations. They're being trained to think strategically, to argue persuasively, to lead confidently. This is knowledge asymmetry as class warfare, and it's more effective than any physical barrier they could construct. While your children memorize dates and formulas they'll never use, their children study how power actually works in the real world. While you're taught what to think through standardized curricula designed for mass conformity, they retaught how to think through Socratic dialogue and critical analysis. Look at the actual CU. Curriculum differences. Public schools teach you that manipulation is bad, that persuasion is somehow dirty or unethical. Elite schools teach their students Aristotle's modes of persuasion, ethos, pathos, and logos. They learn exactly how to influence people, ethically and effectively. Public schools avoid discussing power dynamics because it might make students question authority. Elite schools explicitly teach Machiavelli's The Prince and discuss when and how to apply different strategies. You were taught to be suspicious of rhetoric and persuasion, to think that these are tools of deception used by bad people. They were taught that rhetoric is the foundation of civilization, that the ability to persuade is the alternative to violence, that mastering communication is mastering reality itself. You see the difference? You were taught to fear the tools of power. They were taught to master them. Public education strips out all discussion of social class and wealth building. You learn nothing about how money actually works, how investments compound, how wealth is preserved across generations, how tax structures benefit the rich. You're taught just enough math to be an accountant for someone else's business, never enough financial literacy to build generational wealth yourself. Meanwhile, elite students are learning portfolio theory, trust structures, asset protection, and wealth preservation, before they graduate high school. The subjects you do study are carefully selected. History is taught as disconnected facts and dates, never as a study of power dynamics and how empires rise and fall. Literature is taught for themes and symbolism, never for the rhetorical techniques authors use to persuade readers. Science is taught as established facts to memorize, never as a method of thinking and questioning. Every subject is neutered of its practical application to gaining and wield. Power. Philosophy, when it's taught at all in public schools, is presented as abstract navel-gazing. Dead white guys pondering unanswerable questions. You might read a page or two from Plato in a literature class. You might hear Descartes' "I think, therefore I am" mentioned once. But you never study philosophy as what it actually is, a collection of practical frameworks for understanding reality, making decisions, and navigating power. Elite students spend entire semesters on single philosophers. They read primary texts, not watered-down summaries. They study Machiavelli's actual advice on acquiring and maintaining power. They read Hobbes and Locke on the social contract and the nature of government. They analyze Nietzsche on morality and power. They examine Sun Tzu's Art of War and apply it to business strategy. They're learning the operating systems of human civilization while you're learning to operate within someone else's system. The knowledge embargo extends to practical skills of influence. You're never taught formal logic, so you can't identify logical fallacies when they're used against you in advertising and political rhetoric. You're never taught cognitive biases, so you don't recognize when your own brain is being exploited. You're never taught negotiation theory, so you accept the first offer in salary discussions and business deals. You're never taught body language and nonverbal communication, so you miss half the conversation happening in any interaction. Self-education in forbidden knowledge becomes your revolution. Not forbidden because someone is actively blocking you from libraries or websites, but forbidden in the sense that it's kept out of your expected path. The system is designed so that you never think to look for this knowledge because you don't know it exists or don't understand its value. Read the primary texts they don't assign. Machiavelli's The Prince on the acquisition and maintenance of power. Schopenhauer on human nature and motivation. Cicero on rhetoric and persuasion. Marcus Aurelius on self-command and leadership. Robert Greene's syntheses of historical power dynamics. These aren't academic exercises for getting a degree. These are weapons for navigating reality. Study formal logic and learn to construct valid arguments and identify invalid ones. Study cognitive biases and learn where your own thinking is compromised. Study negotiation theory from people like Chris Voss and learn that everything in life is a negotiation. Study evolutionary psychology and understand the deep patterns that drive human behavior beneath cultural conditioning. Every philosophical framework you master is a decoder ring for their strategies. When you understand Hegelian dialectic, you see how they create problems and offer solutions that expand their power. When you understand Nietzsche's will to power, you see the fundamental drive beneath all human action. When you understand Stoic dichotomy of control, you stop wasting energy on things you can't change and focus on your sphere of influence. Claude is AI and can make mistakes. Please double-check responses. Everyone sees what you appear to be, few experience what you really are, and those few dare not oppose the many who have the system's defense behind them. Let's consolidate your arsenal. You now understand the moral shield, how ethics are weaponized to control you. The meaning vacuum, the engineered crisis keeping you searching, the reaction trap, emotional manipulation as mass control, the comfort prison, how pleasure became your chains, the knowledge embargo, the strategic education gap they maintain. These aren't observations, these are your operational intelligence. The wealthy fear philosophical literacy because it's the one thing money can't suppress once it's in your mind. Every concept you master, every framework you internalize, every strategic insight you gain, these are permanent upgrades to your operating system. Claim your sovereignty, not through permission but through knowledge they never intended you to possess. The wealthy fear philosophical literacy because it's the one thing money can't suppress once it's in your mind. Every concept you master, every framework you internalize, every strategic insight you gain, these are permanent upgrades to your operating system. Claim your sovereignty, not through permission but through knowledge they never intended you to possess. Strong cliffhanger for channel conversion. But here's what I didn't tell you. There's one philosophical framework so powerful, so immediately applicable, that it's actively suppressed even in philosophy departments. It's called the dark triad of strategic thought, and it's the subject of my next video. If today's content made you uncomfortable, what's coming next will fundamentally alter how you see every power dynamic in your life. Subscribe and activate notifications, because once you understand this framework, you can never unsee power again. The game is about to change.